The Texas Longhorns are one of the premier brands in all of college football, have multiple national titles, and have always been an elite team. Ever since the Mac Brown era started to die down though, things have been a little bit of a struggle. Charlie Strong could never get the program back to true relevancy, Tom Herman showed a lot of flash, but he could never put it all together, and now they're headed into year one under new head coach Steve Sarkisian. There are high expectations for Texas every single year. There are always a ton of memes about Texas being back, and now there are the talks of them going to the SEC. So the Longhorns have been in the news and in everyone's minds for a lot of reasons over the past few months. But in terms of their actual football field success for 2021, people have no clue how they're going to do. There's obviously a ton of hype, but there are a lot of question marks, a lot of new roles that need to be filled, and just overall a lot of uncertainty. In today's video, we're going to talk about the Texas Longhorns, preview their roster, depth chart, and schedule, and talk about the truth about this team for 2021. Right before we get into that, I want to say thank you for 50,000 subscribers, but now we are on the road to 100K, and since 80% of you guys are not subscribed, I'm going to need your help to get to 100K, so please be sure to hit that button, as I really do appreciate it. Now let's get started and talk about Texas football. I've done a ton of previews so far, and I will be doing a ton in the coming weeks, so be sure to check out the playlist I've left down in the comment section, and turn on post notifications so you never miss when I upload one. As we always do, let's take a quick glance back to the 2020 season and see how they did. Led by Tom Herman and Sam Ehlinger at quarterback, the Longhorns beat UTEP in their first game, and climbed as high as number 8 in the country going into their Week 2 matchup. They had a miracle comeback on the road against the Texas Tech Red Raiders before the Longhorns would suffer a 33-31 loss to TCU. From there, they put up a great fight against Oklahoma in the Red River rivalry, but they would lose in 4 overtimes, and the Longhorns were 2-2. They would rebound with a win over Baylor, an overtime victory over number 6 Oklahoma State, and then a close win over West Virginia to climb back into the polls. They still had a chance to go to the Big 12 championship game, but they lost to number 13 Iowa State at home, and they were officially eliminated. They would beat Kansas State 69-31, and then their final game of the year would get canceled against Kansas. They'd go to the Alamo Bowl against Colorado, where Ehlinger would get hurt, and both Casey Thompson and Bijan Robinson would put on a show. They beat the Buffaloes 55-23, while the hype for Bijan and Thompson began that night. Tom Herman was fired though, and they decided to bring in Steve Sarkisian, who was the offensive coordinator at Alabama and won the Broyles Award for the best assistant in college football. When you take a look at their 2021 class, it was second in the Big 12 and 15th nationally. It was headlined by 5-star athlete Jatavion Sanders, plus 10 other 4-star recruits. Sarkisian also did some work in the transfer portal, as he landed former Bama running back Keelan Robinson, former 5-star Bama linebacker Ben Davis, a linebacker from Mexico State named Devin Richardson, a linebacker from Notre Dame, another linebacker from LSU, a wide receiver by the name of Brendan Schooler from Arizona, and then finally a corner from McNeese State named Darian Dunn. Overall, I think it was pretty solid, and I'm really pumped to see what Keelan Robinson can do in this offense. Let's take a look at the roster now. When you take a look at the quarterback position, you lose both Sam Ehlinger and former top 100 quarterback Jaquindon Jackson, so now they have to fill that role. Casey Thompson was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school and showed brilliance in that Alamo Bowl win over Colorado, but he's really only had one good game so far in his career, and it's all based on height. Hudson Card was one of the best quarterbacks in Texas high school football history, was pretty much a 5-star recruit, and has all the potential in the world to be the next great Longhorn quarterback, so the battle's really going to come down to those two. From there, they signed 2 guys that most people outside of Texas have probably never heard of, as they signed a 3-star recruit in the 2021 class by the name of Charles Wright, and another 3-star in this year's class named Cole Lord. I don't think either of those two will see the field, and if they do, there will be a serious problem. When you take a look at the running back spot, I think this is one of the strengths of the team. Yes, they lost Keontae Ingram to USC, but there is plenty of talent in that group. First and foremost, you have Bijan Robinson, who's a dark horse Heisman contender for 2021, and could be one of the best players to ever step through the Texas football program. He'll likely have 3 solid backups, as you'll have true freshman 4-star recruit Jonathan Brooks, Alabama transfer Keelan Robinson, and a junior by the name of Roschon Johnson, and all 4 of these guys are pretty decent, and I'm very excited to see who takes that backup role. The wide receiver spot, there was some attrition, as they did lose both Brennan Eagles and Tariq Black to the NFL, and while neither got drafted, they are both high impact. There are 2 guys who are crucial for this year's success at the wide receiver spot, and first and foremost, it's going to start with Joshua Moore. He had a spectacular start to the 2020 season, but he did kind of flame out at the end, but in my opinion, he has the most potential of any wide receiver on this team, and I think he will break out. The second guy is Jordan Whittington, who is a former 5-star recruit, and I think he needs to put it all together and have a big season. From there, guys like Kelvontae Dixon, Marcus Washington, Alvonte Woodard, and Kai Money all saw the field last year in return, and a guy by the name of Troy O'Meara showed a lot of flash last year in camp, but ended up having a season-ending knee injury before he could even play. Other guys on the roster include Dejon Harrison, Kennedy Lewis, Jaden Alexis, Xavier Worthy, Montrell Estelle, and Casey Kane. Herman actually produced a decent amount of good wide receivers, as guys like Devin Duvernay, Colin Johnson, and Little Jordan Humphrey all saw time in the NFL, but I think this roster has a lot of potential, and the wide receiver spot will be a lot of fun. At the tight end spot, the starter is going to likely be Cade Brewer, with his backup being Jared Wiley or Jatavian Sanders. At left tackle, it looks like the starter will be Christian Jones, with his backup being Andres Carrick, and then at left guard, you'll have Junior Angelo as the starter, with his backup being Logan Parr. At the center spot, you'll likely have Jake Majors. At right guard, it'll likely be Denzel Okafor, and then finally at the right tackle spot, you're more than likely going to have Derek Kerstetter. That right there is the offense, and if there's something that you disagree with, a player you think will break out, or something else worth mentioning, be sure to let me know down in the comment section. Now let's go over to the defensive side of the ball. After losing Joseph Asai to the draft, the Longhorns will need a new star to step up in 2021. Taking a look at the defensive tackle spot first, the starter will more than likely be Keandre Coburn, with his backup being Tavondre Sweat. At the other spot, you'll have Moro Ajomo, with his backup being Alfred Collins. At the jack linebacker spot, Bama transfer Ben Davis will more than likely be the starter. And then at the other outside linebacker spot, you're more than likely going to see Ray Thornton. At the middle linebacker spot, you're likely going to see Luke Brokermeyer, who is in fact related to the Brokermeyer twins at Alabama. And then finally, at the will linebacker spot, the starter will more than likely be DeMarvion Overshone. In terms of the secondary, we're likely going to see Deshaun Jameson be one of the starters. Josh Thompson will be another one. Jaron Thompson will be another one. At the strong safety spot, you'll see Brendan Schooler. And then finally, the last starter on the defense will more than likely be BJ Foster. Overall, I'm not too familiar with the Longhorns defense, so if there's something you disagree with or something I missed, be sure to let me know in the comment section, and also let me know your thoughts on this year's defense and how they will do. Overall, the Texas roster has a lot of talent, they have a pretty strong coaching staff, and the ability is there, but the big question is, will they put it all together, and how are they going to perform in their schedule? Let's take a look. We will know how this season goes after weeks 1 and 2 for Texas, as they do not have a popcorn game to start out their schedule, as they play arguably the best group of 5 team in the country in Louisiana. They return 21 of 22 starters, will more than likely be ranked, and have the hottest up-and-coming head coach in the country in Billy Napier. This team is full of experience, they want to win this game, and I do believe it'll be extremely close. I think Louisiana and Texas will go back and forth, and this game is 50-50 in my eyes. And while I want to pick Louisiana so terribly bad, I'm going to give Texas the nod just because they're at home. Texas fans may disagree with this, but I am extremely high on Louisiana. In week 2, they have to go on the road for a primetime matchup against Sam Pittman's Arkansas Razorbacks. After the Chad Morris and Brett Bielema disasters, Pittman had a strong 2020 campaign, and while it did not result in a winning record, the Arkansas football team and program looked drastically different from years past and were more competitive. Going into year 2 under Pittman, they have one of the best wide receivers in the country in Treylon Burks, and a quarterback with a ton of potential in KJ Jefferson, but this season is going to be determined on how well Jefferson plays, and while I once again want to pick Arkansas in this game, I think Texas has a more talented team, and I don't have enough faith in Arkansas just yet to pick them to win this game. I think there is real potential that Texas could win both of these games, split them, or lose both of them. At this point, I don't know, but it is a tough way for them to start out. They finally get a pretty easy game at home as they'll play against Rice, which should be an easy win, and then they'll play Texas Tech at home, which is another game I believe they will win. Matt Wells is under more pressure than any coach in the Big 12, and while the Red Raiders did give them a scare last year, I think Texas will survive this game, and at this point will move to 4-0. In their 5th game of the year, they'll go on the road to TCU, and while the Horned Frogs have been down over the last 2 or 3 years, I think they're going to have a bounce-back 2021 campaign, and just like that Arkansas and Louisiana game, I think this one is 50-50, but because I picked Texas early on, I'm going to go with TCU in this game, and Texas will be 4-1. From there, they'll go neutral site as they'll play against Oklahoma in the Red River rivalry, and I'm extremely high on Oklahoma this year, and while I think it could be close, I think Oklahoma's going to win by multiple scores, and now the Longhorns are 4-2. From there, Texas will return home to play against Oklahoma State, and while the Cowboys do return a decent amount of talent, they got to replace Chuba Hubbard, and I'm not ultra high on Spencer Sanders, so I think Texas will win this game at home. From there, they go on the road to Baylor, and Dave Aranda has a ton of question marks to answer, and I have no idea who Baylor's quarterback is even going to be right now, so there is no reason why I wouldn't pick Texas to win this game, and that would get them to win number 6. From there, they go on the road to Iowa State, who is a college football playoff contender, a top 10 team, and has one of the best quarterback running back duos in the country in Brock Purdy and Breece Hall. While the Cyclones did beat them last year, and revenge will be on the minds of Texas, I think Iowa State is the better team here, and they are at home, so I think Texas is going to lose their 3rd game of the year in this one. From there, Texas will be able to go back home and beat up on a Kansas team which is so far behind right now that there's no way this game is even competitive after the first quarter. After that, they have a tricky game on the road against West Virginia, and Neil Brown seems to have a lot of hype going into year 3. And while I will believe this game is close, just because of the talent gap, I'm going to say Texas wins this game in close fashion. Finally, they go home for homecoming against Kansas State, and just like West Virginia and TCU, Kansas State is an experienced team. They always play tough, and they have good coaches. So while I think Kansas State can keep it close, I'm going to give the nod to Texas in this, and that puts them at a 9-3 record. From there, they'll likely get a pretty solid bowl game, and I would have to see the matchup to make a prediction for that, so we will have to wait and see. In my opinion, this season will be shaped off those first 2 games, as if they win both of them, I think it gives this team a ton of confidence, and that could carry over to a really strong 2021 campaign, but if they somehow lose those first 2 games, I think it could be a really tough year. The games I have circled for Texas include that Louisiana matchup, the Arkansas matchup, the TCU matchup, the Oklahoma matchup, the Iowa State matchup, and the West Virginia matchup. Those 6 games are going to determine the season for them, so I could see the Longhorns going anywhere from 6-6 to potentially 11-1. There's a lot of pressure on Steve Sarkisian to deliver in his first year at the helm. We're going to see who the quarterback will be. We will find out how this defense will do, and in my opinion, they have a pretty difficult schedule, so I'm very curious to see how the Longhorns will do. What do you guys think, though? Who do you think will win the starting quarterback job? What is your prediction for Texas this year? And will the program ever be back under Steve Sark? Be sure to let me know down in the comment section. Hit that like button if you want to support today's video. Subscribe if you're new here. Let me know what team I should do next, and check out all my other videos on the end screen, including my video that talks about this year's quarterback battle. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.